Hi there booktube, it's Eleanor here and this is the start of my wrap up of the week. So I'm going to talk to you about two books that I finished, one last night and one this morning. So the first one I finished was Roald Dahl's Madness. This is a collection of Roald Dahl's short stories which were published over a number of years or decades even. And I was looking forward to reading this because I loved Roald Dahl's children's books growing up, and I thought they would probably be quite dark and a little bit gritty, and I was really excited to get reading them. However, I was super disappointed with this, unfortunately. I just didn't find... My biggest problem with short story collections is, or short stories in general, is I really don't like a short story that sort of just ends and I feel like there was no point to it and there was no wrap up. And there was no sort of substance, I suppose. Just nothing. I'm just like, well, why have I read all of this? There's no resolution, and there's not, you know, it doesn't have to be in a nice, neat little bow, but in some cases, it just made no sense whatsoever, and I found it really frustrating. There was probably just one story out of all of them that I enjoyed, and that was The Landlady, which I thought was really interesting, and I liked what was going on, but it was obvious from the start what was going on. So yeah, I just didn't find, there was no reveal, there was no slow creepy feeling and then like, oh no, that's what it is. It was just obvious to me, so I really was disappointed with this and I gave it 2 stars. So the quest is still on for a short story collection. And then unfortunately, another book that I've given 2 stars is The Butcher's Hook by Janet Ellis. I was really hoping to like this. I'd heard really good things, people had really enjoyed it, and I finally got to it. I read it along with Janet from Swirly Girly Reads because we've really been enjoying buddy reading together. And so we read it over a number of days. It's easy reading. I found, you know, it wasn't difficult to read. I didn't find it too heavy, too literary. And my main criticism here is I just didn't like anybody. There was not one redeeming character in here that I liked. And so I just didn't care. I just didn't care what happened. I didn't have any emotional feelings to anything. I didn't feel any build-up of emotions in the sort of romantic sense. I didn't feel any build-up of emotions in terms of the story and the plot. And I found it very slow and meandery, and yeah, I was just left a bit cold by this one, unfortunately. It's the story of a girl called Anne, and she's from quite a wealthy family. She's got a father and a mother, and she did have a brother who died when he was a couple of years old. And it's obvious that her family, for her father, having a son is all important, and the time period that this is set, you know, they want to have a son to carry on the name. And so her mother has been put through numerous attempts at having another son, only to have a number of miscarriages and finally to have given birth to a girl. The father is disappointed. He's now decided that Anne, who is, I believe, 19 in this, is to be married off. And so he picks a suitor. Anne has other thoughts and feelings, and she has desires and interests that are a bit out of the norm for a girl her age. Something happens to her earlier on, which even in itself I just didn't feel... I mean, I should have felt really terrible for her, but I mean, yeah, it was horrible, but I just didn't feel... I just didn't like her as a character. I felt she was very flat and very cold, so I couldn't feel that emotional empathy for her that I wanted to. She meets their butcher boy, and a sort of romantic notion occurs to her, and it follows this story. And there's some dark and grisly bits, but it, like I say, I just felt it was just really flat for me, and unfortunately, like I say, I gave this one 2 stars. Another book which I have also finished, which I read on my Kindle, is The Heartbeat. I don't know if you can see that. The Heartbeats of Wing Jones, and this is by Catherine Webber. This is a book that I was kindly allowed to read on NetGalley. So this is the story of Wing, and she's grown up with her older brother Marcus being the golden child. He's, you know, set to go into the NFL. He is sort of a senior at school and you know, popular, and he's a great big brother. She spends a lot of time with him. She's only sort of a year younger than him. She hangs out with him and his girlfriend and his best friend, and she's got a bit of a crush on her brother's best friend as well. But Wing doesn't really do anything. She doesn't have anything really for her. She just sort of tags along and she's happy. And then one evening they get a knock on the door, and Wing's brother Marcus has drunk driven and killed 2 people and crashed into a car of a mother of a 2-year-old and killed her too. He's not dead, but he is in a coma, and so we then follow Wing and the fallout from this. Her father has previously been killed. He was a police officer who was shot, and so it's just her and her brother living with her mother and her 2 grandmothers. And the grandmothers in this were such brilliant characters. They were very funny and very engaging, and we're just learning about how Wing copes with this. How she copes with the fallout at school and people blaming her for what her brother has done, and the other children that have died, and her coming to terms with the fact that her brother is not going to drag them out of poverty, and his medical bills are mounting up, and the only thing she finds solace in is running. And it turns out that she is a really good runner, and it's just a really, really good story. We've got lots of themes touched on. There's drink driving, there's school pressure, there's some diversity in there. We have lesbian character, we have look at race and social hierarchy within schools, and poverty and the healthcare system. There's things touched on in here, and I just thought it was a really well-rounded book. It lacked that push into a 5-star for me, but I did really enjoy it, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. So I've just finished my final book of this week, and it is A Boy Made of Blocks by Keith Stewart, and I couldn't wait to talk about this with you. Had it been 10 minutes ago, towards the end of the book, you would have seen me crying and then smiling. I'm so angry at myself that it took so long to pick this book up. I was very kindly sent it by the publishers, and so, you know, this review is non-biased. It was amazing. It's very rare for me to find a book that is both written by a man and has a male protagonist that I really enjoy, and that's not being sexist, that's just, I find it very difficult to put myself in the mindset of a man. I find it very hard to get an emotional attachment because I don't often feel like I can relate to the things that are going on, and that's just because of the types of books maybe that I read, and so this was just such a joy to find a male character that I could really empathise with and connect with, and it was just such a lovely story. So I always tell you what I feel about it and then don't tell you the plot first, so I'm going to go and tell you the plot. So in this book we're following a man called Alex, and he is in his early 30s. He's got a wife called Jodie, and he's got an 8-year-old son called Sam who is on the autistic spectrum. He is at the very start of the book. He is estranged for having a separation from his wife because things have just got too much, and there is troubles with their relationship which have partly been caused by the stresses of having an autistic child. And throughout this book we're learning about their lives, we're learning about what's happened to them, we're learning about autism and the struggles of being a parent to an autistic child. We're learning about the joys of having children and the joys of having an autistic child, because I think sometimes that we think that having a child that has a disability or having a child that has something different about them is always, you know, there's still so much joy there, and I really enjoyed that. We find out about Minecraft, which is something that still eludes me, and I still am not sure how it all works, and how that brings Alex and his son closer. And then we also have periphery characters. We have Alex's best friend Dan, who he moves in with for a bit. We have his sister Emma, we have his mum, and we have Jodie and Alex's friends Claire and Matt, who have 4 children, and we learn about their story as well. And I just really loved this. There was so much to take in. The characters felt incredibly real, and I think that's something that really hit me. It just felt incredibly real, and I think that's partly down to the fact that the author himself is the games editor at The Guardian newspaper in the UK, and he himself has an autistic son, so I feel like he is writing from experience with this. He's writing with a knowledge of the types of things and barriers that you come up against, and also he's obviously got quite a good knowledge of Minecraft if he works in the sort of video game journalism industry. And yeah, I can't praise this highly enough. It was brilliant. It was a great story. It just it's not one of those stories that sort of, you know, wrapped up with a bow. It's just very real. It's very real how things happen. It's very honest, and like I said, I cried and I laughed and I smiled and I related, and this was 5 stars from me and very well deserved, and I suggest that you all go and pick it up. Anyway, that's it from me this week, and I look forward to speaking to you next week. Let me know if you've had any 5-star reads this week, and if so, what they are, and I'll chat to you in the comments. Bye for now, BookTube.